Welcome to the UIAAA Connection podcast. Hometown Ticketing is proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection podcast and to provide schools nationwide with the best options for digital ticketing for their events. Visit their website at hometownticketing.com to learn how they can make digital ticketing possible and simple at your school. Thank you to Hometown Ticketing for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection podcast.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today we have as our guest Hall of Famer of the NIAAA, Bobby Rossi, CMAA. Bobby, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Hutch. Appreciate you having me on.
And how are things in Naples, Florida right now?
82 degrees and sunny as usual.
As usual. That's great. Let's have you start, Bob, by sharing with our audience here in Utah and across the nation where you grew up, where you went to college, your first job, those types of things.
Sure. Grew up in Trenton, New Jersey, Hamilton Township, and went to high school there. Also stayed home for college. Went to Trenton State College, which is now the College of New Jersey. In high school, played basketball, baseball, football. College, I was a two-sport athlete in basketball and baseball. And also in terms of teaching, I graduated in '75 from Trenton State and went right into teaching. My big job at that point was 3 days a week. The only job I could find. And one day I taught at a Catholic elementary school in the basement. And the fifth day of the week, I was a permanent sub at a local high school. So it's kind of interesting first year in education for me.
Yeah. So talk for a minute about maybe the youth sports you played in Trenton, Little League, that type of a thing.
Sure. Played, there was no quote travel teams back then. So you did the normal 3-season scenario. I didn't play football until I was in 9th grade, even though they had, a Little League scenario in that realm. But I played baseball from Little League all the way up till American Legion ball. And Trenton is known for us being a sports town, and I played even after graduation baseball in an unlimited league that traveled around Pennsylvania and the local areas, Connecticut, Maryland situation. Basketball, again, kind of did not participate in any true Little League or organized basketball until I was in middle school. Our middle school back then was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. So an introduction to sports most of the time happened then, and not so much in the youth that we see in today's market. So, and I continued that, like I said before, all the way through college.
Okay, so let's talk for a moment about some of the mentors that you had in your life, coaches, parents, others that made a big influence on you and where you ended up as an athletic administrator.
Yeah, my mentors right off the bat were my mom and dad. My mom, back then, women in sports wasn't a common theme. But my mom was from Morrisville, Pennsylvania, which is just across the Delaware River from New Jersey, Trenton. And she played basketball and softball in high school. She never went to college. And that was a unique situation back then in the 30s for, again, women, girls to be involved in sports. So right off the bat, she had that athletic background and understood what it was about. And my dad, Rossi name in Trenton is pretty well known in terms of athletics, be it through my uncles. My father was an all-state basketball player, all-state baseball player, was one of the, back then again, back in the 30s, not too many kids went off to college, but he was one of the first in the quote neighborhood that went over to Rider University and starred there in basketball as well. And he played baseball. He worked at Roebling Wire, which was big industrial park in Trenton. And again, companies had their own teams. So he was part of the Roebling team well into the 40s. He played and managed. So right off the bat, growing up, I had that as a background and two parents to look up to in terms of their athletic ability. On the AD side of it, the athletic director side of it, I had I like to call them the three musketeers. I had Carl Wigner, who's still the president of our conference, Hall of Fame in himself in the state of New Jersey, from Bridgewater Raritan, and I had Sal Patty, another athletic director from Voorhees High School, and I had Bob Hopek, who was in our conference as well. So those three were in our conference, and wow, if you couldn't emulate or try to take from them the knowledge that they had to make you a better athletic director, and you probably didn't need to be in the business. So that was happened to be in the right place in the right time there.
There you go. So the Godfather is one of your mentors. I love that. He's going to be on the pod. He's going to be on the podcast here in a couple of months. So
right. Well,
that'll be a nice.
If he doesn't mention my name, you call me up. All right. We'll see
I will do it. Bob, why don't you share with us what's your biggest failure and what you learned from it?
That's a hard question, Hutch. I think failure, been thinking about this for a couple of days since you asked me to be on the pod, and I even asked my better half, my wife, and really couldn't come up with a failure other than the two. Like in high school when I played basketball, we were trying to get to the state tournament, and it might sound mundane to you, but Trenton High School was a big powerhouse, and we had to beat them to get into the state tournament. You had to have 50% record or better, and we were 1 under, and we had to beat them at our place, and we lost the close game. And to this day, it still bothers me because that was my last opportunity, to get in the state tournament. And then I thought I was cursed, because as I went in my athletic career in coaching, I was coaching at South Hunter Regional High School, which is one of the smallest schools in the state of New Jersey. 500 kids. At one point, we got down to 350, but grades 7 through 12. And I was the head basketball coach, coming from a coaching stint at Trenton State College, right? So here's this guy coming from college. He's going to make everybody rah-rah happy and lead us to the promised land. And it took me 10 years for us to get into the state tournament. And I finally got there. I was like, okay, the curse is gone. It was like the Bambino curse almost. So that was one thing. And then the other thing, and I think you can appreciate this too, I felt really disappointed. I'm not going to call it a failure that I didn't end up making it onto the NIAAA board of directors. Ran for election, thought I did a good job running, and then, when they announced the winners, and second place or runner up or whatever you want to call us, it kind of sinks you back to reality and say, whoa, everything doesn't go as planned, So I don't know if they're considered failures or not, but there are two things that stick with me over the past years here. So.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I just want to mention I don't think people quite understand what a big deal it is to throw your name out there to the national group to run. I experienced that back in '99 in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And I thought the same as you. I thought, oh, well, how come I didn't win? Everything's not going how I planned. And so that's a tough thing. So you're to be commended for that.
Yeah.
Let's go off.
And the other side of that too, Mark, just one more thing is you also feel you let down your section, and I've been traveling all through New England, New Jersey, New York with Bob over the years. I made a lot of friends, and Section 1 is well represented over the years on the board. And I was like, oh, wow. I felt that was the other side of it too. So go ahead.
Well, I know you had the Utah support, but the thing is you get outside that section and it's, crazy things happen. So I want to go off script for a moment and talk about two things that I didn't put in the email I sent you. The first is, our people want to know, because I know the story behind it when you were out here a couple of years ago, but You need to share with everyone here in Utah and across the nation the story behind the Rossi burger.
Well, the Rossi burger is there's a bar in Trenton, and it lasted for 85 years. A section, I can't speak to other communities. I know they do exist, but Trenton was kind of divided up into sections. There was a Polish section, Italian section, German section. There was, South Trenton, North Trenton, all that kind of thing. And one of the sections was an Italian section called Chambersburg. And within that were a lot of row home scenarios that the immigrants coming across from Europe, they settled in Trenton. There was jobs. And one of the jobs my uncle, not my grandfather, but my uncle had was a candy store out of his house, and later became a liquor store to sell liquor. And my uncle decided one day to make hamburgers, and he made these hamburgers that everybody came in asking more for that than the liquor, if you can believe that. So he turned the bottom of his row home into Rossi's Bar and Grill. And for 85 years, it was the last restaurant to leave the city of Trenton to move to the township, like a lot of the restaurants did. But the story goes that that's how it started. And my uncle and my aunt started that restaurant and started the food. And the hamburger is famous because it's not a quarter pounder. It might be a pound of meat. It's just a big hamburger. And that's what you got. You got a hamburger, and French fries, and a beer, and you were off to the Netherlands. I think it took my kids about till they were 14 that they could finish one. So if you finished a Rossi hamburger, you were good for the night. You didn't have to eat for a while. So that's the story of it. Yep.
I like it. Thanks so much for sharing. The other thing I want to ask you is, and I know how this happened, but because we have talked over the years we've been friends, I've been to one Final Four in my life. That was the Final Four that was in 1979 when Magic Johnson played Larry Bird. And of course, I lived in Salt Lake City and was fortunate enough to get tickets.
I was probably sitting next to you.
Yeah, well, so obviously you and the Godfather, and of course I look for you on TV every year. So explain how that happens and how you're still able to access, because that's a big ticket item now. So talk to our audience about that for a minute.
Sure. Well, I was fortunate enough, my junior year in college, I became the fourth assistant coach for our men's basketball program at Trenton State. And there's a story behind that, but we're talking about the NCAA. So with that, I joined the National Association of Basketball Coaches in 1974. And from that point, when you were an assistant or a head coach, you were allowed tickets to the Final Four. So back then, as an assistant coach, I could get 2 tickets. And there was a lottery. You could get tickets through that. And so I started going 1974, 75. It was in Philadelphia, and I might want to say Indianapolis, or came back to Philadelphia, one of those things. And so since 1974, I've been going every year, other than the birth of a couple children, not having enough money, or not having availability of a ticket, because again, back in the 70s and in the 80s, they were held on campuses. University of Utah,
right?
And or big professional arenas, but only 20,000 seats. So depending on the years that you were in the association, gave you the allotment to get a ticket. So again, as an example, the famous Valvano game, North Carolina State in New Mexico, I couldn't attend, only for the reason was that my years didn't allow me to get a ticket. I could have flown out there, maybe, try to get a ticket, but I wasn't doing that. And now that they're in 70,000 seat arenas, well, pretty much anybody can go. But Bob got involved because probably 10 years ago, maybe, I said to him, I go, why don't you just become a member of NABC? You can, and you probably can get a ticket. So he did, and he got a ticket, and he's been going ever since too. So, but we kind of see each other there, but don't see each other there. Only the fact that a longtime friend of mine who was a fellow coach in New Jersey, we've been going since the 70s together. And he went again this year in New Orleans. It was good to see him after this pandemic situation we went through. So that's the history of me in the Final Four. So I got 40, I think I'm 45-year member of the NABC. Yep.
That's a great story. You mentioned the Valvano game against North Carolina State against the Phi Slamma Jamma. I think that 83 game was the last game that was on a college campus.
It might be
Mexico.
I think Hutch, I came back to New Jersey as a favor for Bob Mulcahy, was the athletic director at Rutgers. And that's the story there, that it was in the Meadowlands one year. And as an example, my seats were the last row in the Meadowlands, all the way up top.
At the top.
And the NABC convention did not take place in New Jersey. The seat of it was in New York City, but the games were at the Meadowlands in New Jersey. And I think that was the last smallest arena that they used. Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So let's talk for a minute. I want to make sure I get, so you were at Hunterdon Central High School, or was it regional? Did I say it right?
Yeah, it's a regional, Hunterdon Central Regional High School.
Okay. And so my question is, you started coaching there, I'm sure, but you eventually became the AD. So how did that happen? Or were you hired as the AD when you went there?
Yeah, I was coaching at South Hunterdon Regional High School, which is 10 minutes away. One of the smallest schools in the state, like I was already explained to you. But I went up the road 10 minutes to Hunterdon Central, which is one of the biggest high schools in the state of New Jersey, 3,000 students, 9 through 12. And how I got the job was, the word was out that I wanted to be an AD. I was coaching all three sports, 2 head jobs at South Hunterdon. And I thought I was going to be replacing the athletic director who was close to retirement at that time. His name was Gene Laporte. And all of a sudden, Sam Jeffries, who was the head football coach, said, "No, I think I'd be interested in the AD's job at South Hunterdon." And I go, wow, to myself, like, well, I'm not going to buck Sam. He's been there longer than me. If he wants a job, it's his job. And all of a sudden, I got a phone call from a vice principal at Hunterdon Central. Her name was Jennifer Speaker, who was involved in gymnastics, was the head basketball coach over there. And the gymnastics angle is between her and my wife, who was a gymnast and an official as well. And so they knew each other. And Jen knew me through Debbie. And she goes, "Hey, Bob, I thought you were interested in being an athletic director." I go, "Well, I am." She goes, "Well, why didn't you apply for the Hunterdon Central job?" And the answer was, because I didn't know it was open. She goes, "Well, get your letter in today." So I get my letter in, and next thing you know, I have an interview with the principal and vice principal. I have a second interview with them. And then the third interview, I was coaching softball, and we lost our pitcher. As you know, softball depends a lot on a pitcher.
Oh, yeah.
And she didn't come back for her senior year. She went to another school. And so we're struggling. I had to make somebody a pitcher. We're 0-10. And I have an interview with the superintendent of Hunterdon Central that afternoon. And we win. It's like our first game, like I am excited as can be, right? So we win, and I come into this office, and I had this interview with the superintendent, and I thought it didn't go well. I mean, it just didn't go well. So I came home, took all my suit off, got my painting clothes on, started painting. Debbie walked in and said, "Bob, so what are you doing? Why are you painting?" I go, "Deb, I'm going to be painting the rest of my year." I didn't get that job, And the next thing you know, I get a phone call the next day, and they call me in. They offer me the position. I go, "Guys, what's going on here? I thought yesterday, I didn't think went well at all." He goes, "Bob, it's already a done deal. You just had to go in and sit down with the superintendent." I go, "Well, why didn't you tell me that?" I've been looking, my anxiety level flew off the table. So that's how I ended up getting the job. Stayed there 24 years and had a great career there. A lot of fun.
Okay, so talk about your time now with the DAANJ, and then obviously how you got involved with the NIAAA.
Sure. Well, the DAANJ I got involved with, again, through Bob Hopeck. before I got involved specifically with the DANJ, I was traveling with Bob to all the Section 1 states when we had our section meetings. So I got to see, and we were invited to their award ceremonies, and I got to see all these other states in our section giving out various awards. And I just said, Bob, why aren't we doing this? And he goes, nobody just really is taking the lead. I go, well, shoot, I'll take the lead. So I go, give me a meeting in front of him. So I went into the DANJ. I'll never forget that either. And I'm just this athletic director from Hunter and Central, and I have this whole plan of making sectional award winners for the state of New Jersey. It's all set and done. And I sit back in the chair and I start hearing, basically, who's this guy telling us how to run our job? And I left and I called Bob afterward. I go, how'd it go? He goes, well, Bob, you got your point across because we're going to be doing it now. It's just they're not going to do it the way you said. I go, hey, I don't have to take ownership to anything. If it means, more ADs in our state are recognized, that's what it's all about. So that was my first introduction. And then about 5 years, Bob ended up retiring from North Hunterdon Regional High School, and his position on the board is my county, Hunterdon County, and Warren County. And he said, hey, would you be interested? And I go, yeah, love to. So that's how I got onto the DAANJ board, which led to my continuance to be with Bob and traveling through Section 1 and the NIAAA. And ironically, Hutch, and you may know this, back in '92, when I first became an AD, I got a phone call from a retired athletic director from Florida who told me that I had to be in my position so many years, which I think it was 3, before I could become a member of the NIAAA. That's what I remember. Maybe not be correct. But once that happened, I signed up, became a member at NIAAA, attended my first conference and said, thank God, this is what I need. This is what I need to hear other people, what they're going through, what they're experiencing, how they solve problems. And that's how I went from the state to the national.
And so where was your first conference, if you can remember?
I know my first LTI conference was in Nashville, but I can't remember where my first conference was. Put me on the spot there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, well, the reason I ask is because, so my first conference was in Nashville in '97. And of course,
so,
I was at Opryland, and I was still lost by the time I left. But that leads me to my next question, was the 1998 conference. And then I thought, I had heard about the leadership training. So I signed up for leadership training courses, and where we met then was in one of these courses. So I want to have your recollection of that, because my recollection could be bad, but that's when I first met you way back in '98 in Nevada. So what do you remember about that?
Well, again, I can only go back to the Nashville experience first, because I think that was the first time they actually presented a course, LTI, course in Nashville. And I took the course, and there's a story behind that as well. And I can't remember her name. She was a dear lady, AD from Georgia. And she taught the course, and she told the story about this athletic director from New Jersey and how she has to control him and all this stuff. And I'm sitting there and go, holy mackerels, I think she's talking about Hunter and Central, not me. But the guy that preceded me, who I was the only second athletic director in the school's history. He was there 38 years, right? So after the course, I went up to her, I go, hey, are you talking about, so-and-so? And she goes, yeah. She goes, did I say anything wrong? I said, no, as far as I know, you hit everything on the nose. So that was my first experience with LTI. But I know, Hutch, when we first met, that the only thing I can remember is, sitting in the classroom, and we hit it off for who knows why, for what reason. You're a very personable individual, and I think I am too. And that's my only recognition. I can't make something up to you, Coach. I can't.
Well, I just remember sitting there, because it was LTC 503, if my memory is correct.
Wow, okay.
But I bet there was 110, 120 people in there, and they had tables, 6 at a table.
Yep.
And they had 3 instructors on. I mean, it was a big room, and you and I happened to be at the same table, along with Ed Lockwood and Craig Perry, who also have become dear friends of mine.
Oh, wow.
But then that's when we first meet. But then let's go now to your time, because shortly after that, you were named to the NIAAA Awards Committee.
Correct. So, yeah, and that lasted 8 years. And our hookup again happens when you come on. You're my third seating. What were you, Hutch? President? Not president. What are you? Chair.
Yeah.
So, and so I had already went through Dave Bell for 2
Right.
years, who was my first person sitting in that chair, which was a great mentor to have in terms
Right.
of the boards committee and NIAAA. And then a young lady that I can't remember her name from Michigan sat in that.
Karen Lenar.
Karen Lenar, that is
Yeah.
correct. And then, if I'm not mistaken, you took her spot, right?
I think it was the lady from, I'm trying to think of her name, from Indiana. It was when they combined those committees, and she just had it for
1 year.
1 year, right?
Yeah,
and
no,
then,
you're
and then it
correct.
was me. But
Yeah.
what I remember is that, and not that anything was wrong, because I thought the committee went great, but I remember you and I sitting at the back, and Joni was sitting by us, and I think maybe Sandy Mater
Yep. Sandy
from
Mater, yep.
Texas. And we were all fairly new within 1 or 2 years. And we said, we should try to do this, or why doesn't the committee do that? Or
Right.
maybe we should do this. And of course, we were just young and impressionable, thought we knew it all. And so I just threw my hat into the ring. And I said, I'm going to apply to be a vice chair. I said, they're not going to pick me because there's all these other people, you
Right.
3 plus all these others in front of me.
Yeah.
And to my surprise, I get that. And then I'm only that for a year. And then I'm the chair for an unbelievable 5 years. But of course, then you're my vice chair. And I just have such fond memories, because we were able to do so many things. We started with the flower on the lapel thing at the banquet. We started assigning people to meet people at the president's reception. So any other memories about the awards committee you want to share? Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, and having the booklet at the president's reception after the first year we did it, we're like, well, we don't even know, we know their names, but we don't know what they look like,
Right.
They have to have the booklets in advance. Hey, Hutch, how about giving us some books?
And we got them. Yeah.
That's a good idea. Okay, let's do that. Now we could see, Johnny Jones or Susie Q coming down the hallway, identify him, and not look like, who are you kind of question. And also from the awards themselves, handing the award out, and it's not proofed. And I remember going up on stage and handing it to Bruce Whitehead, and I'm like, hey, just tell him we got to get the trophy back from him because it wasn't correct. And I'm like, what the heck is all this? So, then we split the group up, and one vice chair did the awards meeting. I took over the awards, and we straightened all that. It was a lot of fun. It was a challenge to get it right. And I think I even said in my video this year at the Hall of Fame, it was good to see that those practices are still in place and being followed, and make it special for the individual when they do get their award. So they were great times with Joni. And the other thing too, Hutch, a lot of people from that committee went on to do things on the board of directors, like Andy Childs and Mark Armstrong, and yourself and Joni.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
the whole crew, it just seemed everybody was gravitating from that awards committee to other positions within the organization, which was great. It was a good thing. So, yeah.
I remember, because we did the one vice chair took the state awards meeting, and the other vice chair pretty much was yourself, made sure everything ran, making sure the awards were there, everything was smooth. And so we didn't have that. That was a great time. Let's have share your recent observations about the recent conference in Denver. It'll be a 2-part question, because the second part will then talk about your Hall of Fame induction, but just talk about the conference in general.
Yeah, the conference, it was great going to Denver. I went to the last time I was in Denver, and man, Denver, from what I remember, when the first time I was there to now, changed an awful lot. I, I remember being locked in a restaurant after 10 o'clock. They said, well, we got this final call for a drink and food because we're locking the doors at 10 o'clock, and Denver's changed since then, those days. So, but the conference itself is never ceases to amaze me. It was great to see it after such consequences as this pandemic has put us in, athletic wise, country wise, and to see all the people just eager, joyful, to be in a mass area with people that they haven't seen in a while, other than Zoom meetings and emails, and be able to talk to people face to face. I thought the conference went really well, extremely well, as always. And it's a very fine-tuned machine now from when it was 30 years ago. Everybody, that's the great thing about the NIAAA. New people are always coming on board. New people always have new ideas. I don't think it's so much about reinventing the wheel, but fine-tuning the wheel. And that's what I've noticed and what I've seen. And that's what, as long as I continue to go, I think that'll always be present.
Excellent. So let's go to the second part of that question. I want you to speak to our audience now about that special experience of being inducted into the NIAAA Hall of Fame, what that was like, and then of course receiving your award on the last night we were there, Tuesday night, right there at your table and things. Explain to it, because that's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, you said it right from the get-go. It's an experience. First of all, in quotes, I was very humbled and taken back, getting told that I was going into the Hall of Fame. I was, first of all, humbled in the fact that my state wanted to put my name in. We've only had 2 past representatives in the Hall of Fame, Virgil Sasso, who started our organization back in 1951. I think we were the first state organized athletic association, and he was the executive director for, I don't know, 30 years. And then Bob Hopek got in the Hall of Fame 4, 6, maybe 7 years ago. So to be the third one in is just an honor. That's just unbelievable. And the experience, being there, I can laugh now at it, but God, my nerves, I got nervous again about the interview process. You've told me in the past, and other people have told me, hey, they don't give you any questions. It's off the cuff. And I'm like, oh my goodness gracious. So, just a sidebar on that, they changed the room where the interview was going to be, that you make your video. So I got that, but Sister Lynn did not. So when I get on the elevator, there's Sister Lynn. She goes, hey, Bob, congratulate. Yeah, congratulate. Where are you going? I go, well, I'm going to 568. She goes, no, you're not. You're going to 467. I go, sister, you didn't get the message. It's at 568. So we go up to 568, and there's Bruce and all the video guys. And they go, hey, guys, come on in. Sister Lynn, hey, Bob, great. He goes, Bob, we got a chair. You can sit in here. I go, no, I'd rather wait outside. So no, lo and behold, 20 minutes maybe later, they call me in, and I sit down. Sister Lynn leaves, and they go, Bob, we just asked Sister Lynn one question, and she just and I go, well, that doesn't surprise me in the least. And so they go, well, take your time, you'll be fine. So they asked me the first question, Mark, and I'm sitting there, and the guy is filming above the young lady who asked the question. And I'm saying to myself, Bob, what the heck are you saying? You are not making any sense. And I can't even tell you what the question was. So it ends, and the cameraman, who knows me from all our years doing the awards, right? Those guys all know me. He goes to the girl and says, hey, we have to do that question over again because there was an audio problem. And I know what he was doing because I botched that thing tremendously, right? So they re-asked the question. I had tried, time to think. I answered the question, and he goes, "Hey, that went great. Audio was great. Answer was great, Bob. Keep it going." And after that, it's just, and then you sit there, and Hutch, you're in the beginning. They do it by alphabetical order, as you know. I'm towards the end, and we had Bruce from Ohio, his wife, accepted on his behalf, and that was very sad and touching, video. And then a couple others came on, and I'm sitting there with Deb, and I grab her hand. I go, "Debbie, my video doesn't look anything like this." She goes, "That's okay. Don't worry. It'll be fine." I'm going, I don't know. And then when it came on, it did go really well. I was happy and pleased about it. The only thing I was it's not being happy, just I didn't get an opportunity to thank more people. And because you don't get that question, or you do get the question, some people did. And I was, that's what I was a little not disappointed in, just, whatever, you've gone through it. So,
well, no, I remember the
like
exact
if
same.
you left somebody out that was important in your life.
Because you go in and you think, now I want to make sure to mention so and so. I got to mention these guys. I got to mention these women.
Yeah.
I just, there's 15 or 20. I just want to make sure that I don't sound dumb. And then you get to the end, and then all of a sudden it's over, and you think, now what did I say? Or did I get it? Boy, did I say something about them in the video? I wanted to, but then you can't. Or you said something, and then you see the video and you're going, well,
did I say that?
They left that part out, but it's.
Yeah.
But it's
for about 3 days in a row, I kept saying, "Bruce, was my video all right?" He goes, "Bob, just relax. It'll be fine." I go, "Okay, all right."
Perfect. Thanks so much for sharing. And for those in the future that get to that point, which there will be many ADs across the nation, you have that to look forward to. It's certainly not as chaotic as Bob and I make it, but we kind of made it that way, but it's a little bit better. So let me go back to in your final years as an AD. So put your hat on when you were back working.
Okay.
What was the favorite part of your job before you left Hunterdon?
Well, my favorite part of the job, this might sound a little off the cuff, but it was just going in every day, because I liked my job. I tried the vice principal role, and I didn't like the negativity of it. That is discipline kids, and you're always dealing in the proverbial 10% of the population, correcting them or trying to correct them, trying to do a good thing. But I just felt that's not where I wanted to go. I'm more of a positive person and want to see good things come out of people and kids. And so the athletic director's job for me was going in every day and trying to make the situation better, either for my coaching staff, my secretary, which I was fortunate enough to have, for me as an athletic director, making processes better or outcomes better or things that I've learned at the NIAAA and incorporate them into my program. So that's what I really enjoyed the most. And also the fact, the challenges of, we had a 20,000 square foot gymnasium. We hosted a lot of events. We had top-notch facilities, and it was fun being able to host the event and see it carried out from the beginning to the end. The planning stage, the actual event, and then it ending. And, again, some people leaving being disappointed because they didn't win, but, the elation on the other side, whether it was Hunter and Central playing or, another school from another section playing at our facility. So that's what I enjoyed. I enjoyed it. I enjoy it to this day. I look back on those days fondly and appreciate the comments that Hunter and Central got, which is a reflection of our athletic department on how well we ran things that we were assigned to. So
Very good. Thanks for sharing that, Bobby. So this has been a great experience being able to interview you. Let me finish with a couple of questions. The first one being, which I ask everyone, if you have two pieces of advice for a brand new athletic director, in order to be successful, follow these two pieces of advice, what would those two pieces of advice be?
Okay. I call it some people say it stands for Oreo, but it's not. But it's ORE, especially for beginning athletic directors. I went in as the outsider in my job, and I took it upon myself to observe what was going on season by season. So the fall season, that's where I was focused. I wanted to observe what personalities I had as coaches, how they coaches, how the kids reflected on them. And then when that season was over, I wanted to review. The R word was, what did I see during the football season? What did I see during the soccer season? I wanted to review and make sure I had my bullet points in order. And then finally was the evaluation part with that program to go over what I saw. And not so much for change that first year, but to say, hey, this is what I saw. I'm the new kid on the block. You've been here a few years or more. And this is what, I saw as an outsider, which I thought they appreciated. And then from there, moving forward was just, I'd say a second thing is just document, the process. And the process could be whatever the word comes after. Hiring a coach, hiring a secretary. It's probably the hardest thing I ever did than hiring a coach. And understanding that somewhere down the line, somebody's going to come back to you, an administrator, somebody above you, or a fellow athletic director and say, hey, how did you handle the hiring process? As an example, and you can say, I got it right here, Hutch. I'll send it to you, and you can follow it or adapt it or change it to what meets your particular high school. So they were the two major things I do. And in my high school, since we're so big, I know I'm throwing a third one at you, but I wouldn't handle any money. All the monetary was done through other people. People get in trouble.
A wise man.
Yeah, we don't touch any money. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Well, let me finish with this, Bobby. What questions should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
Yeah, a little disappointed in that, Hutch. I hope you were going to say, how's your assistant athletic director? And I still see that question mark on your face. So my assistant athletic director was my wife.
Yes.
So coming home every day, whether it was Friday, Saturday, Monday, Tuesday, didn't matter. In my case, Debbie was my sounding board. And a lot of times she would bring me down off the cliff and say, hey, Bob, and I go, okay, Deb, that's why I'm asking you. I can't ask anybody else. So I think that relationship that you have with your significant other is very important in you feeling comfortable in your job. Whether, in my case, we had children, she did a lot of that work. And I tried to do on my end, find ways to escape and help that dynamic as well. So I think one of the important jobs as an athletic director is that significant other in your life that you can rely on for support, direction, and throw questions at them and say, hey, how would you react in this situation? So that'd be a great question there.
That is a great, and of course, that's another thing that we have in common since both of our better halves are named Deb. And clearly both of us married above our pay grade. So that's worked out for our benefit.
For sure.
So that's, boy, that wraps it up for this edition of the UIAAA Connection. And once again, our guest has been Bobby Rossi, Certified Master Athletic Administrator and NIAAA Hall of Famer. Thanks for being on the podcast, Bob.
Hutch, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.